Now to talk about this, I'm joined on set by André Loesekrug-Pietri, the chairman of the Joint European Disruptive Initiative. Excuse me. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
I'm also joined live from Brussels, I believe. Francesco Bonfiglio, you're the CEO of Gaia-X. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
So I'm going to start with a question for both of you, but it seems like we've been talking about digital sovereignty throughout the day, and it seems like we're in the middle of a dilemma here, if indeed there is one, in which, on one hand, we live in a rapid tech era where technology is moving very fast, and we need to accept that we need to depend on other nations for certain technologies, but we also need to reduce the dependency. We've seen, the horrible consequences that this can have in the light of COVID-19, for instance. We're also seeing that some countries are still in a quite protective scheme where it's China for China, the US for the US, Europe for Europe. So what should we do here? Should we play defense or offense? Francesco.
Okay, I'll start first. I think we shouldn't play defense or offense. We should play transformation, and we should be aware of the change around us. And of course, the COVID-19 produced a side effect, which is crucial. Everybody is aware now of the value of their data, our own data, our own lives, our jobs, the school of our kids. Everything is tied to data platforms. And actually, this awareness was really much accelerated by the pandemic. But it's an awareness that we are gaining too late. So in other words, we should have been moving faster, and we should have moved differently in Europe, for sure, but as well across the globe. So the effect I see now is that everybody's asking for something different, and this is what Gaia-X is producing. Basically, everybody is asking for more transparency and trust on the underlying infrastructure technologies, namely in the cloud technology that host our data and are the foundation of every data platform. And data platforms are the foundation of data economy, and data economy is the future of our overall economy. So we're talking about a market of data that in 2025 will reach 1 trillion euros in Europe. So that's real economy. We are not talking, academics, dissertation, or what data is. So this is the good part of it. So everybody now understands the value of data. And as I said, maybe this is late. The bad part is that we are living, like you said very well, in a very split up world of technology. So sometimes we feel we should build something different in Europe than what has been built in the US. And some may believe that to do this, we need new regulation to build walls against non-European technology. Somebody else believes we should build new technology just for the sake of doing it. And it makes no sense. So rebuilding something that has been already done by others with excellence, and I'm talking about the giants of data platforms, you name it, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, just to name a few, it makes no sense to rebuild something. So what we believe is that we build something new that will produce a new opportunity, so competitiveness, and therefore the opportunity also for the European market to regain sovereignty, meaning depending less on non-European technologies, but as well in an inclusive way, and producing a next generation of cloud infrastructure, a next generation of data spaces, which are the basis of the data economy, that is open, federated, transparent, trusted, and sovereign. In other words, sovereignty means moving from an era or a place where you give out your data to be controlled by someone else to a new model where you get control back of your data. But of course, this data will keep being controlled by operators that are professionally capable to do the job without reinventing the wheel, without reinventing necessarily new technology, new servers, new operating systems, but with a new overlaying meta cloud, let me call it that way, that will allow once forever that transparency, that interoperability, that basically that the same mechanisms that any European citizen, that any citizen of the world would expect from a bank managing his own money, or from, I don't know, having the key for his own house. So that's exactly what we're building within the cloud. And that's sovereignty in my mind.
Thank you very much. André, I said it earlier, you're the chairman of the Joint European Disruptive Initiative, the very powerful acronym JEDI. It's pretty much the European DARPA, and the idea is to say that if you push for disruptive innovations, then that's the main way you can reach sovereignty. What is your take on this?
Thank you, Julia. So first, I want to thank you to invite me and to be part of this initiative. So thanks to Telecom and to NetExplo to allow me to be here. I agree with everything Francesco said. I will be less politically correct than him. I think we need to play and defense and offense. I think on the defensive side, I would say the regulation part, let's face it, our laws, let's take, for example, competition law, is totally unfit for the digital age. There was a lot of discussion about talent. When Google buys DeepMind, they take up in one stroke 30% of the best minds in 2014 in AI, and probably killed competition and future. So that's what we need to do. And let's face it, and I think the European Commission, especially the new one, is taking it up. The GDPR is not working. It looks good, but I mean,
looks good on paper.
It's good on paper, but that's why they are talking about a couple of days ago about acceleration, because all these cases are parked in Ireland and nothing happens. And on the offense side, because defensive, and on that one again I agree, fortresses don't lead. And the good news is that technology is an ever-moving field. That means nothing is for granted. So we need to invent the future. It's in our hands. It's not anymore that technology impacts the future. It's also we can have an impact on the technology we want. So that's why we are so focused on disruptive technologies, because it's all about the next big thing. And we heard a lot today about the next big thing. It's going to be a cloud on the edge. Yeah. It's going to be frugal AI. It's going to be face recognition without a centralized database. Things we don't know, and where we can instill the European values in that. And I think on that one, we are slightly different. And the last thing where we need to be on the offense, I know, and especially we're here in the Ministry of Finance, it's always very exciting for policymakers to announce big plans. And we need money, of course. But we have something which is relatively cheap, which we don't put at play, which is the single market. You know, I hear a lot about, oh, when US VCs come, they pay a higher price. No, it's because when you are a US VC, you buy a European company and you bring it to the US, the same European company suddenly has a potential and a value that is demultiplied because there is a massive scale is the name of the game in technology. Today, we don't have a European single digital market. So I urge the policymakers, it's harder, it's less sexy to cut all these national agencies on cyber, on data, because this is fragmenting the market. And that's cheap. That's not costing budgets a lot of money.
Francesco, I was seeing you nodding. Do you want to respond directly to André on this?
Well, of course, I agree with André, with all he said, and yes, he was less politically correct than I was. But let me stress on one point, and I'll switch my mode now. Will become less politically correct too. I think the GDPR, well-defined. Actually, the GDPR created the problem we have today. Believe it or not, and I keep repeating this story because the GDPR was created in 2018. When the awareness of losing the data economy in Europe and running a risk related to data was evident. But the reaction was producing a regulation that protects the data, but don't tell you how to use those data. So I'm a big fan of private data regulation versus a privacy data regulation, because this is the basis of digital economy. In other words, we own the data, I own my data, my company owns my data, and we need to be fully sovereign and fully empowered to use our data to take the best out of it. Unfortunately, GDPR introduced so many roadblocks that literally stopped any digital evolution in Europe. You know, you can be fined 4% of the overall revenues of your holding. That's billions that simply stopped any type of investments in digital transformation projects. We need to be aware of that. I'm a positive guy, and I believe that the new acts that are being elaborated by the European Commission will solve the problem, will basically fill the gap between the GDPR that does not tell you how to use the data and how to use the data. So the Data Act will possibly provide this guidance, and I'm looking forward for it. But in the meanwhile, we need to play smoothly and smartly and very quickly. So the only way to go ahead is to play together, not sliced in single countries, not sliced in single operators, but put more operators together, more technology together in a federated way to build larger marketplaces of digital services and produce that demand, that digital demand that André was talking about, because he was totally right. In a startup world, you are looking for traction. The problem is not getting the money. The problem is getting traction in the market. So I may have the best and smartest startup in Europe, and they will go with an American venture capital simply because they will find traction in the American market and not in the European market. That's our fault. It's not GDPR fault. Well, GDPR has contributed to this kind of situation, but it's a mindset we need to change in Europe as well. So I think that the creating federated view and awareness around this problem is the first step, and technology is there. There's not a big deal of change in doing these things. It's more of a mindset and awareness.
Now, in terms of a sovereign industrial cloud, it seems like, no matter what European authorities do, they end up in one way or another supporting a US innovation. There's always a Microsoft or a Google that ends up in the mix, right? We often hear, and we've heard this throughout the day, that European companies cannot do with Gaffms no matter what they do. Is that true? And can European countries really not function today without Gaffms?
Well, I would call that the political paradox, and that's why I'm so fascinated and optimistic about technology, because it's not anymore a sector. It's the core of our century. I mean, we can call our century the technological century. Look what just happened in the last couple of days. We had the spying story, so it's at the core of the political decisions. We are talking about privacy. We're talking about healthcare, where technology was a game changer, and thank you, and hopefully most of you are vaccinated yet. So we are living in a place where technology is at the core of our political systems. And the paradox I'm mentioning is DMA and DSA that Francesco was alluding to. I agree with him. I think it is pretty well seen what needs to be done. What worries me is that in the current political process, we will need 6 months to get it approved, and then 2 years to get it through the official European regulation, and then 2 years to be implemented.
It's too slow.
In 2025. And your point about the GAFA is that very often policymakers, look what happened with the tracking devices, tracking apps last year. We were so caught off guard that we needed to do something. We realized how cloud is important, and so that's why you have these blue initiatives, which I don't want to criticize completely, because we need some kind of thing like that, but today you... So what we need is, I don't agree with the concept that democracies need to be slow. We need to find a way where the democratic process goes much faster. Otherwise, it's going to be authoritarian states, and I've been living in China for 10 years, and there was this myth by a lot of people that we would converge. Unfortunately, it's not the case. I don't want this system anywhere near our system, but if we don't do it, they will run us in front of us in terms of efficiency. And on the other side, we need foresight. The fact that there will be a pandemic is not a black swan. The fact that we will need a tracking device was something that should be, and that's probably the focus of policymakers. I would encourage that they less put money into directly investing in startups, because history shows and economics shows that that never ended well, but they should put much more focus on what should be a smart state, which is this foresight, these 3-5 years. And you talked about DARPA. It's not a surprise that DARPA emerged within the Department of Defense, because within democracies, it's the only ministry that goes beyond the famous annual budget. You know, they can plan a couple of years. We need in democracies to be able to plan 3, 5 years, and not to have one plan forever. It needs to be updated every 3 months. So this is the paradox, is we need foresight and huge agility. Today we are, especially in Europe, not very agile, and we are living almost one month after the other.
Francesco, do you agree with this? And what do you respond to people who say that Gaia-X, you know, has partnered in a way with Microsoft, and that, you know, perhaps the cloud is not as sovereign because there's a GAFAM in there?
Well, I disagree with the fact that Gaia-X is not going to develop this sovereignty concept because GAFAM is there, for 2 reasons. First of all, what we are building is involving as well the GAFAM. So not many knows that the Gaia project has got also Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Alibaba around the technical tables working together with us. Someone may ask why they do that. So that's an interesting question. But the answer is that they understand this is exactly what the market needs. So Gaia-X is a clear response to the next generation cloud, which is no more vertically scalable into limited, huge data centers, but it is instead following the paradigm of data gravity, of edge computing, and so it is distributed across nodes. So we need a new generation of cloud. And that's why they are working as well. The second reason I don't believe that they are going to be, there's not the opportunity to change the game, is that, again, because we are building something orthogonal, I keep using this word, it's orthogonal, it's exactly completely different from what has been built today, and nothing like that exists. First of all, we have opportunity to be first. For the first time, Europe can be leading a technology change. And second, as a newcomer, we might have an opportunity to become competitive because those large and huge investments in hyper-scaled technology cannot be changed overnight. So basically, there's a lot to lose if you want to move from that model into the model Gaia-X is building. So one might believe that, okay, this is a gamble, and therefore, maybe you will succeed or maybe not. But this is not a gamble. This is where data are going. There is no way to stop the data distribution, the data flooding, the data gravity, so-called. So the only way for the future is having distributed computing, distributed cloud, distributed artificial intelligence, and there is nothing like that out there in the market. So now it's just a matter of time. Be fast enough to do it. But the paradox is that we, as Europe, being late, might be first. And we might have less, let me say, investments to defend than others that invested billions. And they invested billions in completely proprietary custom technology. So this is not just a game. When we talk about the monopolism of US and China technology, let's be careful, because we have companies like HPE, Fujitsu, Dell, that are suffering the same problem because those hyperscalers don't use that standard technology. They have their own technology. So it's a real war. That's true. So we need to defend and offend, right? But we need to do it with the right weapons. So the right weapon are the new ones we are building. So we are building a new generation of cloud. And if we do that, we will play in the same level of competition with the so-called over-the-top today. Not many believe this is true, but if you think about that, we are really designing some new game with new rules and nothing comparable to the past.
Well, thank you very much to the both of you for this very fascinating talk, and thank you for speaking openly about both of those projects.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.